Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskiy visits an injured Ukrainian serviceman at a military hospital in Kyiv, March 13, 2022. Ukrainian Presidential Press Service via Reuters. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy delivers a video address to senators and members of the House of Representatives gathered in the Capitol Visitor Center Congressional Auditorium, at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, March 16. J. Scott Applewhite-Poole. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy poses after an interview with Reuters in Kyiv, March 1. Reuters Umit. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy speaks in a video statement with sandbags behind him in Kyiv, March 8. Instagram Volodymyr Zelenskiy. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskiy presents flowers to Katerina Vlasenko, a 16-year-old girl who was injured as she fled with her family from the town of Oryzl, at a hospital in Kyiv, March 17. Ukrainian Presidential Press Service via Reuters. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskiy meets with members of the State Emergency Service at a hospital in Kyiv, March 17. Ukrainian Presidential Press Service via Reuters. A woman from Ukraine listens to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy's speech on a phone at a refugee shelter in Beregshirny, Hungary, February 28. Reuters Bernadette Szabo. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stands up as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy addresses the Canadian Parliament in Ottawa, Canada, March 15. Reuters Patrick Doyle. A woman works on a pillow cover with a portrait depicting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy, in Česká Lipa, Czech Republic, March 17. Reuters Eva Kernkova. A road sign named after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy stands outside of the Russian embassy in Washington, March 8. Reuters Leah Mills. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy during an interview with Reuters in Kyiv, March 1. Reuters Umit. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskiy listens to a chief of the National Military Medical Clinical Center Major General Anatoly Kazmirchuk and the Chief of Medical Forces Command Brigadier General Tetiana Ostashchenko, at the hospital's compound in Kyiv, March 13, 2022. Ukrainian Presidential Press Service via Reuters. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy speaks during the news conference in Kyiv, March 12. Ukrainian Presidential Press Service via Reuters. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy's face can be seen on a TV as it broadcasts CNN from a top room inside the White House in Washington, February 24. Reuters Leah Mills. A mural by graffiti artist KAWU depicting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy as Harry Potter with Z on his forehead instead of a lightning bolt is seen in Poznan, Poland, March 9. Piotr Spornicki Aganka Wyborcza. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskiy attends a meeting with Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, Polish Deputy Prime Minister Jarosław Kaczynski, Czech Prime Minister Peter Fiala and Slovenia's Prime Minister Janez Janša, in Kyiv, March 15. Ukrainian Presidential Press Service via Reuters. A woman uses a phone in front of a stencil graffiti with the image of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy, in Podgorica, Montenegro, March 8. Reuters Stevo Vasiljevic. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskiy visits an injured Ukrainian serviceman at a military hospital in Kyiv, March 13. Ukrainian Presidential Press Service via Reuters. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy attends an interview with foreign media in Kyiv, March 3. Ukrainian Presidential Press Service via Reuters. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskiy meets with members of the State Emergency Service in Kyiv, March 17. Ukrainian Presidential Press Service via Reuters. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskiy meets with members of the State Emergency Service at a hospital in Kyiv, March 17. Ukrainian Presidential Press Service via Reuters. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy speaks alongside other Ukrainian officials in the governmental district of Kyiv, confirming that he is still in the capital, February 25. Ukrainian Presidential Press Service via Reuters.